Hi, this is Maria Ramirez with Social and Emotional Learning and my classroom in action. This is a short video about social and emotional learning and some of the topics that I am interested in. Why social emotional learning is important, and this is a quote from the Handbook of Social and Emotional Learning. In so many ways, the whole science of child development and the best philosophy of education agree completely on the fundamental truth that learning is a relationship and that the student's success of education and that the success of education depends almost completely on the strength of the social emotional dimensions of the learning relationship. We have different opinions, points of views, and philosophies of education, and then on child development. On the thing that they both agree is that social and emotional learning is essential for learning. Now, how is this important in the classroom? We know already how social emotional competent students are able to manage themselves, understand different opinions, make various choices. We have students who are able to learn because they are capable of understanding their own emotions and manage them. SEL is linked to 11 percentile point gain on standardized test achievement. We have proof that this is not just a behavior that is separate from their learning. It's something that is connected, and SEL improvement and acquisition of SEL skills goes hand in hand with better academic performance. We have better classroom behavior, and we have students who are more likely to graduate from high school, obtain a college degree, and obtain and maintain employment. Why is this important for us teachers? Because we're making learning equal and accessible for all students, no matter what their background is, no matter what sets of social emotional skills that they come into class. If we are individualizing instruction and we're trying to find ways to target our diverse learner and ways to ensure that we're giving everybody the tools they need. Some of our students, they come from backgrounds where they don't have those tools at home to acquire those SEL skills. When we provide that at school, we're giving everybody an equal chance for success. SEL stands insertional time in the classroom. Of course, if you're not using your time to manage behaviors, you're teaching. According to CASO, teachers who possess social and emotional competencies are more likely to stay in the classroom longer because they're able to work more effectively with challenging students, one of the main causes of burnout. If I don't have tools to handle myself, my emotions, if I don't have tools to manage the emotion of my kids, I'm going to feel tired, I'm going to be exhausted, frustrated, which will change completely the environment in the classroom, and I'm going to feel unhappy. My students are not going to be happy, and there's no learning happening. And this is why it's very important for us to practice social emotional skills in the classroom, to acquire those skills and to understand how to use them in the classroom. One aspect that I found very personally passionate about is cultural awareness, social skill training, and how we can use this training, especially with our high risk students. And in doing my research, I found this article called Changing the Landscape of Social and Emotional Learning in Urban Schools. And what are we currently focusing on and where do we go from here. The article is a review of the use of social emotional interventions in urban schools over the last 20 years. And she's mentioning urban schools because she defined an urban school where the population suffers more from health disparities. There is a greater risk for mental health issues, institutional racism, neighborhood crime, parental stress, residential mobility, and students are most exposed to trauma in these settings. And then what she did was she investigated a list different types of intervention used in these urban populations, the outcomes, and which of those interventions were using culturally responsive pedagogy. But we're looking into this, and this is a citation from the research. To truly support the mental well-being of urban students, we need to engage them in strength-based interventions that not only meet student needs but also acknowledges and builds on strengths between the individual, students, their family, and community. Also, vitally important in supporting students' mental health is the use of strategies centered around student interest and the use of knowledge to help students retain and, in some cases, build on their social emotional skills. One method of creating strength-based supports for social emotional programming is the use of culturally responsive pedagogy in delivering social emotional learning interventions. So what this means is, this is important because if we are looking into inclusive education, inclusive teaching, if my lesson planning has something for the visual learner, for the kinetic learner, why we're not using the same perspective into SEL interventions? We need to individualize also SEL interventions, make it relevant, make it interesting, support our student background and culture, and build on those strengths within that culture and ethnicity, so the student goes home and use those skills and it feels proud, it feels that belongs, that he or she doesn't have to put aside their own culture to use those skills. So it's vitally important for the whole child, for their well-being, that we individualize and make our interventions culturally aware. So what this means is that we're reinforcing those cultural expressions that are effective, and we're giving those tools to our students in a manner that is not foreign. We're giving students options within their culture of how to navigate conflict and how to build on those competencies, so we can sustain and maintain that culture instead of neglecting it or putting it aside. We're using students' views, interest, and what they want already. We're not changing them, their identity, their culture, their background. We're not changing that. We're giving tools so they can improve without losing their identity. And that's very important because we're giving them power instead of taking it. So the author defined cultural aware interventions because by looking into which interventions were based on the cultural knowledge of the students, or which interventions included training on culturally responsive strategies to engage students. Sorry. So, at the end, and after looking into the review, the results are that out of the 66 interventions that she studied, only 9 were using interventions that were culturally responsive according to her definition. Only Imani Rites of Passage addressed racism, and none of them addressed the role that racism can play on the mental well-being of the students. And this is important because last week we were talking about how important it is to embrace diversity instead of saying deny it, that there is racism and difference. So what we're talking here is that we're telling our teachers in our program, we want you to embrace diversity, we want you to talk about it, we want you to provide a space for students to do it, but then we're not changing our interventions, our practices, so we give them a platform and address this issue. It's like it doesn't exist, and you just we'll deal with other skills, but we're not giving a skill to address what you're living every day in your life. Then another highlight is how keeping it real and Imani Rites of Passage are the only interventions that are using culturally aware strategies for their interventions. We are mainstreaming our kids in a culture that is not who theirs. We're not using our diversity to strengthen our kids' social emotional skills. This is very interesting and frustrating for me, because we are in a world where in every classroom there's a little piece of different kinds of backgrounds, and we want to make them all like there is just one culture, and that's not how it is. This is something that we need to tackle. I would like to know more about how these culturally aware interventions, what is the different outcome between these interventions and a culturally and not culturally aware interventions according to her definition, and get more deeper into this issue so we can serve better our kids. How can teachers apply social emotional learning in the classroom? We start by modeling good self-awareness, modeling good self-management. We provide the students opportunity to practice those skills like pair share, project-based learning, collaborative projects. We set clear expectations. We explain to kids, this is how it's going to work. We're going to share our opinions and views and work together, and even whatever personal feelings you have toward that student, you put them aside and you get the things done. We explain how to behave professional, how we do adults, how we're supposed to do in the adult world. We're culturally aware, appreciate other opinions, points of view, and experiences. By providing students the opportunity to share their feelings, opinions, and experiences, we want the kids to talk about what they live every day, what they are worried about, what they're interested about, what they think about different things that goes around in your classroom. And we want to discuss with students strategies to resist peer pressure in words that they understand so they can use it and make responsible decisions. If you want to know more about um, social emotional learning and culturally responsive SEL, here are my references. Thank you so much.